been exactly 1 year, a full year since the alarms in commercial aviation started ringing loudly. An accident that shocked the world, the worst in recent years, in which, 12 months later, remains stuck in limbo without answers. There is no final investigation. There are no press conferences or technical reports, and most alarmingly, there are no clear safety measures for the rest of the global fleet. Was it a suicide, a murder in the cockpit, or a massive technical failure? Today we're going to break down the lack of clear answers, the incidents that defy all physical logic, and the new video evidence that has just completely turned this case upside down. Civil aviation has been built on the solid base of transparency. But what happens when a state decides to break that sacred promise? Stay until the end to find out. Let's get to the facts, because before we jump into wild theories or technical debates, you need to be very clear about what happened that morning. On June 12, 2025, Ahmedabad Airport, India, Air India Flight 171, operated by a modern Boeing 7878 Dreamliner, prepares for a long international trip it has made thousands of times. Ahmedabad bound for London Gatwick, 242 souls on board, under the command of a highly experienced crew. We are talking about a wide-body aircraft that, up until that tragic moment, boasted one of the best safety records in all of modern commercial aviation. On the previous flight, the crew reported a stab pass message on the ACAS. The ramp technicians carried out the standard checks, cleared the codes, and sent the plane on its way. However, this ACAS message is related to the pitch systems and the automatic movements of the stabilizer trim. The takeoff seems to go completely normal. The plane rotates, and then something breaks in the physics of the flight. "32 seconds. That is all the time that passed between the wheels leaving the runway and the massive crash into a building of BJ Medical College, a short distance from the airport edge. The impact was terrible. Of the 242 people on board, 241 died. On the ground, 19 other people lost their lives, bringing the total death toll to 260. It is the deadliest aviation accident in recent Indian history, and one of the deadliest in the world in the last 10 years. The airport security cameras captured the takeoff sequence. For a few seconds, the flight path seems perfect. And that is exactly the part that most worries safety analysts. There was no visible outside sign that anything was wrong. No flames, no parts falling off, until it was too late to recover the aircraft. 1 month after the incident, India's Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau, the AAIB, published its preliminary report. And here is the forensic data that changed everything. The data that made this case the most debated and divided in modern aviation. According to the data pulled from the black box, the 2 fuel control switches located on the center panel, which feed off the engines, physically moved from the run position to the cutoff position. This happened about 3 seconds after takeoff, and with barely a 1 second difference between the left and right engines. 3 seconds. That time was enough to choke both engines almost at the same time. With the engines off, without power, at that extremely low altitude and speed, the plane became a falling block of metal. The records show that the automatic system tried to restart the engine seconds later, but physics is cruel. There was not enough altitude or time to recover the flight. Now, this is where the official report falls dangerously short, and where the real official problem begins. The AAIB confirmed what, but not how or why. Were those switches moved by intentional action of the crew? Did they fall due to a purely mechanical failure, or did the electronic system cause the cutoff? The official report simply doesn't make it clear. And that empty space, that technical silence in the most important document of the entire investigation is what has kept families and the industry in a cloud of rumors for 12 months. From these revelations, the case split into completely opposite stories. On the one hand, experts and certain media in the West began to guess about the chances of an international action in the cockpit. Operationally, those switches are only touched on the ground, before the flight to start the engines and after arriving at the gate to shut them down. The fact that they moved to the cutoff position in the middle of the takeoff, without any clear emergency reason, opened the door to the worst possible idea: that someone in the cockpit turned them off on purpose. What fueled this dark idea was the leak of the cockpit voice recorder. In the audio, the tension is clearly heard. One pilot asks the other why he had cut the fuel, and the other responds that he hadn't done it. Although the report doesn't say for sure which pilot said each phrase, that short exchange of just a few seconds was enough for American experts to describe the finding as highly concerning. They highlighted an important technical defense. These switches on the Dreamliner are not simple, easy-to-move levers. They're designed with a high-security spring mechanism that forces you to pull them upwards before sliding them back, exactly to prevent them from being moved by an accidental bump or shaking. For the investigators in Seattle and Washington, that defensive design makes a sudden mechanical failure very unlikely. That, added to the fact that the physical action of moving the switches happened with a 1 second difference between them, tips their balance towards human action. And why isn't this crazy? Unfortunately, the history of recent aviation is full of intentional cases where a pilot causes the tragedy. This guessing soon crossed the globe and reached India, and the response was quick and direct. The Airline Pilots Association of India came out to publicly defend the crew's honor. They demanded an end to attacks on the character of professionals who, according to the evidence they have, did absolutely everything possible until the last second to try to save the aircraft and minimizing the damage on the ground. Several independent experts joined this claim, accusing the AAIB of being careless with the facts, publishing the most shocking data, the movement of the switches, without the needed technical background, allowing the public's imagination and cheap journalism to fill in the blanks. During the checks, the captain reported that the left fuel switch slipped from the run to cutoff with just a slight push, without needing to lift the safety lock, and that it didn't stay firmly locked in its working position. It was, literally, the exact same part, the same mechanism, and the same sign of wear that was at the center of the investigation into the 260 deaths. What was truly shocking for many experts was how that discovery was handled. Air India and the Indian regulator, the DGCA, ran basic working tests on the flight line following the manufacturer's manual, and quickly decided that the switch was fit to fly. There were no global alarms, the fleet was not grounded, just an internal memo asking for visual checks. It was the DGCA itself that, days later, and facing external pressure, was unhappy with the local fix and ordered the physical removal of the part to send it to the Boeing plant in Seattle for a very close look. Air India even paid for its own staff to travel and guard the peace. This situation perfectly shows the political and technical tension of this accident. On one hand, the Western system has unquestionable strictness, but seen from India, when the company that certified and made the part is the same one checking in its lab to see if it is broken, there is a massive conflict of interest. And on the other side, India has a huge reason to push the story toward a machine failure. To protect honor of the dead crew, to save reputation of its flagship airline, and to clear the shadow of doubt hanging over its training system. Also, India doesn't have exactly a perfect safety record, which makes an accident of this size hurt the already damaged reputation of the Indian market even more. But just as the anniversary got closer and this debate seemed stuck in a dead end, the physical evidence took an absolute turn. One that seems to clear the names of the Flight 171 pilots once and for all. A very careful video analysis done on the airport security camera footage, recently published by the independent Indian Safety Matters Foundation, showed a clear technical detail. The ram air turbine, known as RAT, dropped down about 2.5 seconds before the fuel switches in the cockpit moved to the cutoff position. To understand the huge weight of this finding, the RAT is a small propeller generator that physically drops from the belly of the plane when the computers detect a total loss of engine power or a massive electrical failure that leaves the plane in the dark. The logic of the investigation fundamentally changes. The cause cannot come after the effect. If this emergency turbine dropped before the fuel switches moved, it clearly means that the Dreamliner was already suffering a critical system blackout at the exact moment it took off. However, it does not explain the physical movement of the switches, and there is no proof the pilots had any reaction to a total electrical failure. Although we must remember that the flight lasted 32 seconds, the reaction time is minimal. But this theory backs up the confusion in the pilot's audio and makes the Western theory of an intentional manual cutoff much weaker. Added to this is the technical study by Indian The Caravan magazine, which suggests that a massive software failure in the plane's computer system could have caused a flight computer restart. The system, confused, could have wrongly thought that the plane was still rolling on the ground, automatically triggering safety rules that ended up cutting off the fuel. However, despite being a complex and serious idea, it leaves confusing holes. There are physical sensors like the air-ground sensor on the landing gear that detects when the wheels leave the runway, nor does it explain the physical movement of the switches to cut off. Furthermore, neither the Indian Authority nor the NTSB have signed off on its own official paper yet, but the fact that the video evidence points to the machine and not the humans proves that the official silence has been filled by independent studies. And so we return to the great unknown. Why, after 365 days, are we still without the final report? The bureaucracy makes excuses with the complexity of the metal tests that are still going on at the GE Aerospace labs. But there is a huge difference between a careful process and an opaque one. There has been no transparency, no temporary safety rules have been issued. That mix of official silence in the face of strong alternative evidence is a situation that no safety agency wants to face. Global civil aviation is a system that depends on a promise of trust. If something fails, it is investigated, published, and fixed so that it doesn't happen again. When a player hides vital info, that promise is broken, and the global safety system gets weaker. From my point of view, neither of the two ideas can be ruled out. What is certain is that the official silence is the reason that, by not having an investigation result, that heavy silence is filled by thousands of theories that will always fit your own point of view, culture, and interest. Tell us, what do you think happened? Which theory do you lean toward? Do you think info is being hidden? Do Do you agree with the early results? We are interested in knowing your opinion, so leave it in the comments. If you like this video and want to discover many more air stories, technical reviews, current events, facts, and aviation history, subscribe and click the notification bell. It would help us out a lot.